On this Veterans Day, we pause to honor the men and women who have served our country. It is a day to reflect on sacrifice, on gratitude, and on the many ways veterans continue to shape our communities long after their service ends. Today, we're fortunate to hear from one such veteran, John Calamos. John received the Distinguished Flying Cross for his service as a United States Air Force pilot. Few of us truly understand the risks and courage that honor represents, but we can all appreciate the spirit of service it reflects, giving back to a nation that provided opportunity, and honoring that opportunity with duty and excellence. What makes John's story remarkable is that his service didn't end when his military career did. It continued and grew through his work in finance, his leadership in cultural institutions like the National Hellenic Museum, and his deep commitment to Illinois Tech. John shows us what it means to treat gratitude as action. For him, gratitude isn't just a feeling, it's a responsibility. Here at Illinois Tech, John and May Calamos have made that gratitude tangible. As the John and May Calamos Endowed Professor in Philosophy, I have seen firsthand the ways that students and faculty in the Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences Department of Lewis College have benefited from John and May's generosity. The Calamos gift has supported teaching, funded research, and opened doors for students to compete in national events like the Ethics Bowl. It has allowed faculty to be even more accessible and supportive, and students to grow in confidence, turning our classrooms into a modern-day agora of discussion and discovery. This commitment reflects Illinois Tech's mission to lift students, many from the lowest income backgrounds, into lives of achievement and leadership. John knows this impact personally. As a student here, he was inspired by the dedication of his professors. Today, his generosity ensures that future students will have those same opportunities to thrive. It is fitting that a pilot like John also values philosophy and critical thinking. As you can see in John's adventurous biography, The Sky's the Limit, John's career is a combination of instinct and critical awareness. You must trust your instruments, but also know when to use common sense. That balance of discipline and wisdom is what defines both great pilots and great leaders. Joining us today in conversation with John is Dean Rich Klein. Dean Klein leads the Stuart School of Business and brings a distinguished record of service in higher education, business, and the military. He served for a decade as an aviation officer and pilot in the Army National Guard, and he has held leadership roles at major universities and as a consultant to corporations and the U.S. Army. John Calamos embodies the values we celebrate on Veterans Day: service to country, service to students, and service to the public good. The lives of veterans remind us that Veterans Day is not only about sacrifices in the past, it is also about the enduring impact of service in the present and future.
Well, reflecting on your military background, your experience during the Vietnam War, you've flown a number of different aircraft, but the Air Force trained you to fly bombers, which are among the largest aircraft that we have in the inventory. And then they fly at the highest altitudes. You go to Vietnam and you're told you're going to be flying in combat missions in a Cessna 02 Skymaster, which has to be, for the Air Force, one of the smallest airframes that they have, that flies at the absolute lowest level, and that has its own challenges. But what was that experience like? You go through flight school and you kind of have this expectation set of what you're going to be doing, and it completely flips on its head.
Well, then I didn't have a choice. They sent me orders to go to Vietnam as a forward air controller in the Cessna 02. So I had to do training down in Florida for it and do that. And they were just bringing the Skymaster, the Cessna 02, to Vietnam as a forward air controller, because what happened was the aircraft that were helping troops on the ground by dropping bombs and shooting. They were too fast and they needed to be controlled. And the airplanes they had back then, the Cessna 02 was kind of modified to do that. So I went to Vietnam as a forward air controller. And what I had been just stationed and doing was flying B-52s. So I was in the Strategic Air Command, flying B-52s, the biggest airplane in the Air Force. And then they sent me to Vietnam in the smallest airplane.
Yeah, and it's, I think back to the 1980s, and just to give you a sense of what that aircraft looks like, the movie Bat-21, Danny Glover flying it around, and it's just, it's quite incredible of doing that. I was trained in the Army, and so I was trained to fly helicopters, and the entire time I probably got less than 50 hours above 2,500 feet.
Yeah.
So much of my entire career. But it is a challenge when you're flying that low to the ground. You're dealing with not only the navigation, but you're trying to avoid changes in terrain and altitude, wires and all kinds of things. And so you said that you spent time in Florida. Whereabouts in Florida were you to do that?
Yeah, right near Pensacola, in that area right there.
Okay.
There's an Air Force base there, and that's where we got our training in the O2. And it wasn't so much because you're flying low. As a forward air controller in Vietnam, we were flying low and talking to the guys on the ground. But the main problem was when we were low, we were really subjected to fighter from the bad guys on the ground shooting at us. So I think the whole time I was there, I never flew like this. Always kept turning
around,
making sure that you weren't being shot at, because a couple of times I come back, oh yeah, nothing happened, and they said, well, you got 3 holes in your tail, and you got 2. So you never know when you're being shot at.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you don't appreciate that there's you're trying to fly, but then you're also trying to avoid anti-aircraft who are shooting off heat-seeking missiles, and you're the hottest thing that they can find. Right. And then the small arms is always a challenge as well. In your book, you kind of reflecting on the journey and the choice. You recount seeing an Air Force ROTC recruiting poster depicting a pilot in a cockpit with the tagline, "This is my office." And it was that point it prompted you to consider re-enrolling in ROTC. It was a requirement while you were at on the University of Illinois campus for those first 2 years, but you'd met that obligation. And so here you've made a decision that you're going to commit yourself to military service. What finally motivated you to make that decision? Knowing that it would be many years.
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about that in my junior, senior years there. And when I would transfer to Illinois Tech, I didn't join the ROTC right away. I didn't have to. And then as I was studying what was going on and doing all that, there was really an influential election going on at the time. That was JFK, John F. Kennedy. And one of the things he said that really kind of motivated me, don't ask what the country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And him speaking about what's going on in Vietnam and all that was very inspiring to me. And I kind of decided, maybe I can join ROTC. Illinois Tech there, the ROTC room, one half was Navy, the other was the Air Force. And on the Navy, they had a picture that she said was a guy about ready to land on a carrier saying, hey, this is my office. I was thinking, I've been studying business. Hey, I like that. So that's when I ended up walking into the Air Force ROTC. I said, hey, I have 2 years. Can I join? And oh yeah, you can. They enlisted me, so I got commissioned then when I graduated.
Did you know you'd be going to flight school, or did that come after commission?
Yeah, I wanted to do that. Yeah, they said I would be going to flight school. Yeah.
And so you were in Vietnam for, you had said about a year in country, and you flew over 400 missions and accumulated over 833 hours. And on top of that, earned a Distinguished Flying Cross. And the sheer number of missions is mind-boggling to me. When I had finished flight school, I think the only 1 year I earned, a little over 170 hours. So 833 is mind-boggling. Granted, I think by that time we were, the 90s, we were more in a crew rest mode. But can you share a memorable mission or event from your time in Vietnam that's had a real lasting impact on you even today?
Yeah, we flew just nearly every day, maybe even twice a day. And one of the things was our mission is we'd fly around, and then the guys on the ground would be calling us and saying, "Hey, I need help! I need help!" We'd go over there, and then we'd sort out what they needed, and then we'd call in the fighters and everything to help them against the enemy on the ground. And the O2, we had two rockets, or white phosphorus rockets, and what we would do is set up how they could bomb and help the guys on the ground. And what we would do is set them up and then dive in, shoot the white phosphorus rocket, the smoke would go off, and then we'd tell the fighter coming in, "You're cleared, hit my smoke." And then they could not drop a bomb or shoot unless we cleared them in hot. So we were controlling the airstrike for the guys on the ground. So one interesting mission, I got a call, and we got these guys on the ground and said, "Gee, we're being attacked. We need help. We need help." And we flew out there, and I'm trying to figure out where they're at. They gave me their coordinates, and I called the fighters to come in, and I had them overhead, and I'm still trying to figure out, okay, where are you? And I said, "Hey, set up a white smoke." And two white smokes go up. So the bad guys are listening. I said, "Set up a red smoke." Two red smokes come up. Yeah, I said, all right, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Set up a green smoke. One green smoke comes up. And the Army guy on the ground, "I don't have a green smoke." "Okay, we're cleared and hot." So it was kind of an interesting mission. That's
And to think today we do that, just that forward air control completely differently. That it's technology has evolved and changed that whole role. You note that flight school instills in aviators a disciplined approach to how they work and how they operate. That even though you're a pilot flying solo, and all through flight school, they basically train you to be able to fly as a solo pilot. And calling it flight school is kind of an interesting misnomer because I don't know about your experience, but mine, it was more like crash school. Every day was, we're cutting off an engine, or we're cutting off pulling circuit breakers, or trying to get you to not kill yourself when you ultimately graduate. But you know that in this team environment, it's grounded in cooperation and leadership. How has that disciplined approach and the combat experience, where you actually had to go and apply that, shaped your perspective on leadership and teamwork?
I think it's been done. First of all, you're talking about pilot training, which was very influential. I had only been in one airplane, in a commercial airplane, once, and in a light airplane another time. So I really had no experience in flying. And, I'm going to pilot training, and it was just talk about having to be focused. You really had to be focused. Every day in pilot training, you were being graded. And if you weren't successful, okay, you have to take a test and do that again. So it was very inspiring. Not only that, we the first airplane was just a little propeller airplane, T-41, I think they call it, that they flew, and then we had the T-37s, and then halfway through the course, it's 1 year, halfway through, we transferred to the T-38, which is supersonic. So went from hardly ever being in an airplane. By the time later in that year, I'm flying supersonic jets in formation. It was just a tremendous experience, but it really took a lot of focus because it was, it's growing so much. I needed really full focus, full concentration. So I learned a lot about that from that. We had about 60 some in our class, and only half of us got our wings. So it was tough on that. So I took that as a tremendous thing that I accomplished, was doing that.
Yeah, we there's a great deal of talk over recent years in higher education about competency-based learning, and every time there's a lot of discussion about what it is and what it means, and I always go back to the ultimate experience in competency-based learning is flight school for the military, because to your point, every flight is graded.
Yeah.
And you're under a microscope the entire time. It's a tremendous amount of pressure that it's hard to really appreciate if you haven't gone through it. Now, in transitioning to business, you left active duty on the Air Force, and you initially started down the path that many Air Force pilots go down, and that is really to look at flying for the airlines. And you had charted out a path to fly for Delta as a pilot. And ultimately, based on circumstances, you ended up having to make an adjustment to find a new path or dream to pursue. What inspired you to kind of make that pivot from becoming a commercial pilot to a career in financial services?
Yeah, my last time on active duty, I was flying B-52s up in Minot, North Dakota. So we were a strategic air command. We'd be on, alert all the time. Our mission, when we did a practice mission, we'd fly 25 hours all the way to the North Pole, refuel 3 times. And remember, this is the Strategic Air Command, so we actually had nuclear bombs aboard, and we'd fly that and come. So that was an experience. And then we'd come back and we'd be just sitting, waiting, and hopefully they didn't send us off to war somewhere. And in the meantime, I was studying the markets. The other guys were playing cards, doing this. I got interested in the markets early on as a teenager, and I started studying the markets. So when I was, about to leave, I did apply to Delta Airlines, and they sent me an airline ticket. I went down there, I interviewed, and they said, "Oh, you're good, and we'll send you a notice on our class when you get out." And when I got out, I went there for the class, and they canceled the class. 1970 recession hit, and they just canceled everything. And then that's when I kind of decided, no, now what should I do? And I was still kind of studying the market, so I took a job as a stockbroker, and this was in 1970, and that's what got me into finance. So that was kind of the story there.
Yeah. So you were even, while you were still on active duty, had begun to foster this, interest in financial markets.
Yeah.
It's, it's obviously not when you were in Vietnam, but there is a lot of downtime being a pilot. Everybody thinks it's so glamorous, but there's a lot of downtime. There's a lot of prep that goes into flying and things you have to do. So making use of time is always a challenge. After you got off active duty, you made the decision to stay in the reserves and continue to serve in the Air Force. And it's worth noting that that is the commitment there for a pilot is substantial. And most people don't know this. They assume the reserves or the National Guard is 1 weekend a month. But in order for a pilot to maintain proficiency in the number of hours, it ends up being more like 2 weekends a month and then some. And so I would note that it's, to commit to many years doing that is a very difficult thing to do as a pilot. But as you began to do that and transition into business, military organizations, even the reserves, could not be more different than a public or a private corporate environment. You're almost at two different ends in some respects. In others, there may be things that are applicable. But what unique challenges did you face transitioning out of military life, where a lot of decisions, particularly on active duty, a lot of decisions are made for you, where you're going to do, what your next, oftentimes you'd know your next career, your next duty assignment well in advance, to going into the corporate world where things are so different.
Oh, yeah. I think the decision I kind of made is I did want to keep flying the airplane, so I joined the reserves, and they were just getting A-37 fighter jets, and so I applied and got selected for the A-37 jet fighters. And you're right, we had to fly at least 2 weekends a month.
Yeah.
We'd fly a lot, and I enjoyed it a lot, being in the airplane. And actually, the group that I was with, the squadron, they were all looking for airline jobs and stuff still back then. So that was very interesting. And at the same time, though, I had, as you started as being a stockbroker and then managing that, and then eventually, this was 70, 71. By 77, I started my own business to really do it on my own rather than working for a big company.
When we think about military service, and when I got out of college, the notion of having getting a combat patch and having served in combat seemed very distant. There was an immediate opportunity. Today, it's, as we're coming out of nearly 20 years, 20 plus years, it's a very different environment. But all of that brings with us many lessons and experiences that we can never replicate in the private sector, because they are very much unique to military service and having served in a combat environment. Can you recall a time in your business career when some of those unique lessons from your military service influenced the decisions you made, the things you did with your business?
That's an excellent point, because really what I learned from the military experience that I have was about leadership, about camaraderie, bringing the team together, watching each other's back, doing that. We had a mission. How do we successfully manage that mission? So in the business environment, I try to do the same thing. How do I build a team? Teams that watch each other back and do that. So I think my military experience was very, very helpful to me in building that business going forward. How do we build it? How do we work together? The mission was, how do we take care of our clients? It wasn't about the money, it was about the mission. The money is just a byproduct of really executing the mission. And that's kind of, I think my experience in the military was very helpful to me in establishing the business and growing it and creating teams on teams approach.
You also mentioned mission as well, that's something that as I reflect. But you're saying that, and I think about the career choices I've made, and you described yourself as an introvert. I tend to think of myself in the same way, and every new endeavor I've taken on, I've looked for an individual to partner with to balance out that being the introvert in the room. So it's
Well, one of the things about that too was when I was kind of studying the markets, even when I was in the military, I was really learning about different things, and I came across this way. What I was trying to figure out was how do I manage risk? It's kind of like being in the markets like flying an airplane. You better do your homework before you take off. So how do I manage risk? And I kind of discovered convertible bonds as a way to manage risk. So that was really my focus. So when I got into being a stockbroker, I was all about convertibles. Hey, this is how we can manage risk. And in the 1970s, the market was going like this. Interest rates doubled. Everybody went into the bond market, then lost half their money, and it was very volatile. And managing risk using convertibles worked very well during that period. And the options market open, use those. So it was all about managing risk in that type of environment. That was very helpful to me, and that's why I got interviewed by a very large investment company, and I said, okay, this is what I want to do. And they said, no, we'll tell you what to do. You got to do this. And I said, okay, that's right. I'm going on my own. I'm going to start my own because I wanted to use convertibles as a way to manage risk for clients. And that's when we started. So that's why I'm kind of the pioneer in convertible bonds.
Okay. If you think back, had you not joined the Air Force, had you not gone to flight school, earned your wings, served in combat, how might that have changed your career today?
Okay, this is probably what would have happened. I grew up on the west side of Chicago. My parents had a grocery store. We lived on the second floor. We had the store on the first floor. And that's all we did all the time is deliver groceries, own the grocery store. So then I'm the first in my family ever to go to college. I just kind of did everything on my own. I just took off and did that. And to your question, though, is here I am in the 70s, and I'm on TV, being him, and my father watched me on TV. He had no idea what I was doing. Yeah, he was an immigrant from Greece. He had no idea. You know what he said to me? He said, you know, if you would have stayed in the grocery business, we'd be bigger than Dominic's today. So, yeah, no. So I didn't stay in the grocery business. So that was the thing. And but what they did teach me was a strong work ethic. We worked all the time and that type of thing. And the military, the same thing, and the leadership and doing that was very important.
It's a different world gets opened. The kind of reflecting on Vietnam, and you mentioned in your book about veterans coming back, and it was a very different experience. They faced some challenges. Not wearing your uniform to travel, kind of downplaying your what you did. When I was in the military post Desert Storm, that had changed quite a bit. I never felt uncomfortable going anywhere in uniform or being seen. Today is it's kind of an interesting paradox. This past December, I was in a graduation ceremony. Early on, they were asked everybody all the veterans to stand, and I stood up. I was on stage. I was the only person who stood. I'm in a blue regalia, so I stand out from everybody. They went through the rest of the ceremony, read all the names. I'm walking to the parking lot, and I had 3 different people stop me and thank me for my service. I don't recall anybody thanking me for my service during Desert Storm, but it stuck out that what is it today that our veterans are held in such high regard now, even in an environment where we are, I think, as polarized politically as during the Vietnam War. But do you see that difference, and is there something you see that really drives that?
Yeah, I think it's much better than it was when I got back from Vietnam because, as you said, um, they wouldn't even want you to wear your uniform on an airplane coming home. Nobody had any respect for you at all for your service. It was it was a terrible environment coming back. Nobody, said thanks or anything for what you had done in the war. So it wasn't until years and years later, I just got an award. They have Oki Day Foundation in Washington D.C. every year, and they honored me for my Vietnam service. And part of my speech, there's a bunch of veterans there and the whole thing. This was just a few years ago, and the first comment out of my speech is, it's been over 50 years. It's about time someone said thank you for your service. And everybody looked, and when I got off the stage, all the veterans came up, and it was really shocking. So it was a very different environment. And I think today, what we do like is we are honoring the veterans, and that's great.
Yeah, we see that. What advice would you offer veterans as they're transitioning to a business career today? Even in an industry that they like finance, which is
Yeah.
certainly high stakes and challenging.
Yeah. Well, I think they really do have to be kind of focused on what they want to do. They have to be inspired and have a determination on what they want to do to be successful in that, be creative and those types of things. So I can't say do this, do this, do this. There's just a lot of different things they can do, but they have to have the determination to do it. And one of the things we've said here before was we hire PhDs, poor, hungry, and determined. That's what you want. You want somebody to have that determination. And veterans, with all the work they've done in the military and have, usually have that determination and inspiration.
The thinking about leadership philosophies, in the military is a huge focus, is developing individuals' potential with leadership. But what philosophies do you feel you developed through your military service that you continue to draw on in business today?
I think what the philosophy that we had, especially, I learned a lot in my experience in the reserves. The camaraderie that we've had. After all these years, we still get together every year. We get together every year. We don't fly airplanes, we play golf, but we do get together. The camaraderie that we've had among each others for all these years has really been really, really good in sense. And that's what you try and do within a business. You want to create that camaraderie, so you're working as a team and you're helping each other and that type of thing. And that's what I learned from from all the camaraderie we had in our reserve squadron.
Completing flight training, you talked a little bit about risk, but completing flight training and serving as an aviator truly gives you an appreciation for the ability to take risks and to balance those out with managing risks. How do you think your experience in both war and then subsequently in finance and business have really shaped your view of risk taking. And we never say this deliberately, but there's a lot of ethics involved. I think
It is.
when we look, and particularly as you now serve, guiding or helping to guide through your membership on the board at Illinois Tech. But how has that experience shaped your views on that?
Yeah, well, I think it's really important. I learned a lot from my military experience, even in Vietnam. I would get a call, you got a bomb over here, and then I take a look and say, oh no, gee, before you drop that bomb, you want to make sure you're doing the right thing, and that's really important within the military. You don't want to just do something and then find out you killed a bunch of people and you shouldn't have done that. And so having that thought process to me was very, very important and very impactful to how I manage things.
Yeah, the consequences of decisions, even in business. To your point, you talked about just the challenges when you have so many individuals who rely upon you,
Yeah.
who work for you, as you do those things. The obviously, I think President Kennedy, certainly had an impact on your thinking. But you noted that making a broad and lasting impact and being a statesman is about nurturing and defending democratic ideals through civic engagement, through philanthropy, where leadership involves giving back. So what do you see as the legacy that you hope to leave behind the world of finance, your organization, anything?
Yeah, well, that's an excellent point. I did create a foundation, so we are giving back, and we do try and support our veterans. I support my church and Christians. We were one of the donors for the church in New York after 9/11, that type of thing. So giving back is very important, and you're really trying to hopefully make a longer term impact by giving back and really supporting initiatives. To me, it was very important that I came from an immigrant family, and learning about my heritage and all that was very important. So I support my heritage through the National Olympic Museum, things like that. And one of the things I tell the kids there, you don't know where you're going unless you know where you came from. And having that sense, I think, is really important. So we want to really kind of hopefully teach the next generation how to live the American dream, how to work hard, strong ethics, and do that.
And you've actually been back to Greece a number of times.
Yeah.
And been very involved in helping them shape their future, I guess would be one way to
Yeah.
look at it. What do you find that's been impactful about those efforts?
Well, I think it was just, for me, it was really a learning situation, learning that history, taking my father back to Greece and going to the village and all that, and seeing what happened in that area during World War II. And one of the things, so you learn about that history, it just makes you much more, gives you a better perspective on life and what you should be doing. So that was really important. We went to there and we saw all the graves of all the people that didn't survive during the war. And the reason they call it, in that area there, they call it Oki Day, is that Greece did not surrender. When the Germans said you have to surrender, they put on the mountaintop OXI, Oki, no. That means no. And they that really was very inspirational to how hard they worked and how they fought.
So Given our focus on Veterans Day and military service and everything that it means, what message would you have to veterans, to current service members, to young men and women in ROTC or just enlisting you know, as they go forward?
Well, I definitely think we should continue to support our veterans and thank them for their service and do everything we can to support as they go on to their next mission. And, we've had a lot of the veterans be in here as part of our internships and things like that. So supporting veterans that way, I think, is very important. I like their values and what they're doing, so any way we can support them is really beneficial.